Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Good. Let me see if I can get my camera going.
Okay, no worries if you don't.
There you go.
Hi.
Excuse my background.
That's okay. How are you?
Good, good, good.
Good. And I'm just gonna get another piece of paper so I can jot down notes if need be. Okay. So, um, yeah, so I hear, from our conversations that you're definitely going through a little bit of a difficult time or a transition period. So I just want to hear from you first how you're feeling, maybe more context as to what's happening, and then I'll share my screen and we can go into some of the details.
Um, I'm very overwhelmed and kind of lost. I feel like I'm being pulled in a couple different directions. And it's been like this for like 6 years. It's
Mhm.
not even, and I'm just like at a breaking point, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not good at making decisions for myself. I'm better
Okay.
at it for everybody else. So
Okay.
I don't trust my instincts, and I don't trust that um, I'm going to make the right decision.
Mhm. Okay. That's always really difficult too.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of clients that go through similar. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so can you see everything?
Hmm.
Um, okay, so okay, so I have your chart here. And while this isn't a natal chart reading, so I won't necessarily go into like a huge breakdown unless that's something you're wanting to do. Um, One thing that I definitely had noticed right away is that you had talked about relationships being something that is a little bit of a struggle, particularly in a romantic relationship. But what I had also noticed is that the ruler of the seventh house, which is typically how you integrate with others, especially in like one-on-one dynamics, the moon is positioned here in the first house. So a lot of your identity and a lot of how you feel emotionally secure is based on your relationships with other people.
Yeah.
And with this positioning, it's also suggesting that there may be a pattern of codependency in your life that you are trying to overcome. So I don't know if that suggestion really resonates with you, but that's
It does.
typical.
And I feel
Okay.
like where I'm at now, I don't feel codependent any longer.
Mhm.
That feeling and that need that I always had dissipated like a good five, 4 or 5 years ago. And so
Mhm.
now I'm left with, I've never felt this way before. Like I've never felt like I needed to be with someone. Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like I'm I'm basically functioning on my own as it is right now. I have no physical relationship,
Mhm.
um, and there's no codependency happening,
Mhm.
which is a first for me. So I if I'm going to be with any one person, it's going to be based on just friendship and what does that person bring to the relationship? What am I bringing to like more of a normal relationship.
Right.
So now,
Exactly.
yeah. So now I'm very lost.
Yeah, you're going through a huge transition period, and I did go through and write notes on some things that I saw. And I noticed a pattern in many of your Saturn returns and your secondary progression. And these are ways that we can see timing, how you're progressing through life, because the natal chart is showing a lot of your potential. And so we can definitely talk about more of the thematic changes, or we can talk more about planets as they're impacting your chart right now and sort of like what's in your purview at the moment. Depending on which way you want to approach this, we can go any direction that you wish.
Okay.
So
Do you want me to answer that now?
yeah, I mean, or
Okay.
we could talk about what's happening now, and then we can move and shift into like overarching themes if you want to do that. I'm
Yeah.
more
I
than
just
okay.
feel like I need some, I know at the end of the day, it's, free will. I need to make my own decisions, but I'm not doing that. I'm not taking that opportunity or chance, or however you want to say it. I'm not doing that. I'm just kind of like stuck, and it's not going to work itself out. Like I need to figure out. And it's hard for me because I lost that happy place. I can't think of anything that makes me warm and fuzzy. I don't like where I live. I don't like the area where I live, but I live where I am, so I'd be close to my granddaughter. So it's like, okay, I made that choice. Now I have to accommodate, right? But
Okay.
it's just so much.
Okay. I think I got a good idea now. Okay. Because I wasn't sure how much of the relationship we would go into. So that's another reason that I prepped the chart too. So one of the things that I noticed that you're really going through, and if it makes you feel better, my Venus is right around here too. So you have your Pluto just for a while has been going through that first house of self-presentation and identity. So there's been over the past 10 years or so, there's been this huge trajectory of transforming the self-discovery. And
Absolutely.
also when Pluto is transiting this area of the chart, it's also a matter of assessing and bringing to your focus that dynamics with others and learning how to distinguish yourself, learning self-value, learning what kind of role you want to play in relationships. So especially the moon is very often symbolic of our beginnings in our childhood. So especially as Pluto's been going through this area of Capricorn, it's really forced you to separate yourself from repressed emotions, right? Or repressing anger for the sake of harmony. So it's been forcing you to establish more boundaries in life. So I think
Yeah.
now that you've been going through this, you're starting to accept and understand, okay, I now have clarity on what I don't like. So I
Yeah.
have an idea of how I don't want to be presented, but how do I step into an identity that I feel comfortable with? How do I integrate this? And another thing that I noticed is that Pluto is also in this sort of rivalry with that Mars there in Aries. So there is this resistance to the process of change.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think it's sparking a lot of fears for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Things, and I am curious, how would you describe like your childhood? I'd be interested to hear like what dynamic you're coming from your own words rather than me trying to
I
psychoanalyze
had
you.
I had a very traumatic childhood. It was very
Hmm.
unstable. It was abusive, and I've never carried that as an adult. It's not my personality to, oh, woe is me. It's just not who I am. I was, I've always just, that's what happened. And oh, well,
Hmm.
that, that's not my doing. I didn't, I was a child. So I don't control the actions of adults. So I don't carry that burden. That burden doesn't sit with me. It sits with the people that made those decisions. And that's how
Yeah.
I've always carried it. But it did create some abandonment issues that I've worked through my entire adult life. And it gave me, I'm the type of person that when you have a bad situation, then you take that and you make it into a strength, and you
Hmm.
find, what did you get out of it? And you just don't let history repeat itself, which it hasn't in my world. So
That's incredible. And I
yeah,
find that Capricorn ascendant people and Capricorn moon people have a fierce resilience. So
yeah,
there is this sort of like rationalization of emotions or trying to find a purpose behind things that happen in childhood. And I noticed that Saturn, you know, was in this area of early childhood experiences, and Saturn
okay,
can represent dad. It doesn't always, but with a lot of this Aries energy, it was definitely possible that things could have been tumultuous, or there could have been a lot of rage, right? And so sometimes
yes,
people will want to detach from those intense feelings,
yeah,
and want to segment them or compartmentalize
yeah,
emotions. So what's happening now, especially as you can see, Mars is starting to have you're starting to have a Mars return. with that Pluto as well, what this is doing is it's triggering those emotions. And because it's nothing that's directly linking back to that time in your life, you're just feeling the onset of the emotions and the fear. And so it's difficult for you to comprehend and gain clarity as far
Mm.
as what is the trigger. And it's especially hard because I had a traumatic childhood too. So it's hard when we get triggered and it's not something that feels directly linked to that particular time in our life. And we're like, I've healed myself. So like, why am I feeling this way? And I think it's because this need and urgency, which is a good word for like Pluto near this moon, is like this urgency to step out and to be seen as an individual, to self-express more, to be really affirmed in your authenticity. And
Yeah.
so I think that there is definitely some fear, and I think there's in part it's also a, well, I just don't know how to do this. I don't know how. I do feel like, you know, once Pluto is retrograding right now, I feel like once Pluto really enters into Aquarius, I think there is going to be a huge relief.
Okay.
And I think it's going to be easier for you to kind of see the lessons as they've happened. Um, but there is also an ability to look at the emphasis of your chart. So if I were to exit back out, and you notice you have a lot of planets down here in the bottom half, and this typically is suggestive of somebody who has a great need for foundation and stability, safety, and protection in their life. And
Yeah.
so if you're feeling that intense overwhelm, it could be from the fact that you are, as you stated, in a home that you don't enjoy. I don't know if I wrote down what else, but I know you said you didn't like where you lived, but you're trying to be close to your granddaughter. Did you say you didn't like your job either? Did I hear that right?
Well, I
Or
did say that, but
okay.
I I don't I'm not happy in my job because it's extremely stressful and overwhelming, and there's no like it's the type of position where there's no end date. Like it's just this constant wheel.
Okay.
And it's not like, oh, I finished all my work, I'm caught up. Like that's not a thing. Like that can't happen. um,
Yeah.
um, so I have actively looked for positions for like 2.5 years now and done plenty of interviews and nothing's sticking. But part of that is my fault because I know that I'm kind of like keeping that option to go because I
Yeah.
do. There are a lot of pluses to where I'm at. There are a lot of positives to where I'm at, and it's not a money thing. It's uh, a kind of like a balance thing. But if I stay in this industry, it's kind of always going to be this way. That's the nature of the job.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I, and then I realized I need to step back and stop looking for jobs because I'm not stable in the home life. I
Hmm.
can't be switching jobs when I'm not stable in the home life because I'm the type of person that if the laundry's not done and the bills aren't paid and the house isn't in order, I literally can't function. Like
Okay.
and
That
I
makes a lot of
know,
sense.
yeah, and I know where I'm at right now is I knew coming here was a temporary thing, but now it's been a year. It's
Right.
been not well, not quite a year. August is a year since I came here. And I feel very trapped. But then
Hmm.
when I look at, okay, where would you want to go? Nothing is like, oh, I want to go back here. I want to go here. I want to go here. Oh, I'll be so happy here. Like, there's like, I just can't find any solace. And I can't go back to where I raised my kids and where I was living, which I absolutely love that area
Yeah.
because my kids aren't there anymore. And I would just be
Right.
unhappy because they're not there.
Right.
So,
And that
yeah,
is a lot of the themes happening right now, I believe, is how do I separate and focus on myself and my own desires, my need for individuality, while also honoring my family, also honoring
yeah.
um, you know, honoring my ancestry, my roots, my children. So all of this is making a lot of sense to me. So I think it also would be good to talk about um there's a lot of need for initiation right now with Mars's movement. I do think there is a possibility for you to make adjustments in the home, especially once the transiting Mars moves into this area, starts to move into the fourth house. And I can also show you some themes that are happening in your yearly horoscope as well. Um, so here we have your 2022 solar return, which started March 23rd. It does not always happen on the day of your birthday, so that's why I wanted to clarify that. So
Okay.
this happened around 4:47 in the morning. And the way they base this is off of the degree in minutes. So you can see it's 2 degrees 42. So whenever the sun gets to that place. So it can happen the day of your actual birthday, the day before, day after. But what you can notice here is that there is a lot of this emphasis in this general area of the chart, which is all about self-perception, self-development, assessing values and worth. And I find it really interesting that there is a lot of this assessment of relationship dynamics. And the moon in the 10th house is showing that there could be changes in the career before we have the changes in the home. Although I do think they will sort of happen synonymously, if that makes sense. So I feel like they will sort of piggyback off the other.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense. I know that's a lot of information to
Yeah,
process, so I want to make sure.
I would love not to make a change in my home life and my career at the same time, but if that's what's meant to be, I'm okay with it. Like, I just, my biggest problem is I always do that. Whatever's meant to be will be. And that's
Mhm.
not necessarily how life works. Sometimes you have to intervene. Sometimes you have to make that decision. And I'm just really bad
Yeah,
at it. I don't have any trust in my ability to make a good decision for myself because of my past
yeah.
decisions.
I think it's important to trust your, especially trusting in taking inspired action, like taking action on things that make you feel excited, delving into new things, because that's the Mars and Aries sort of purpose, is like to lead a life without fear or worry of isolating yourself in a degree. You are separating yourself and standing out as an individual. And I noticed that one thing that's definitely happening to you this year. So if you had started to notice things changing in around February, this Uranus in the third house is a doozy. I have had this before, and basically it creates so much anxiety, so much overwhelm, and your thoughts are like racing.
Yeah, that's where
Um,
I'm at. Yeah.
and typically also truths will be revealed with Uranus in the third. Like you'll receive a lot of new information, and if you're having this anxiety, it's hard to process it all at the same time. I always recommend writing things down during a year like this. But I also had noticed that, with Mars in the first, there is that, again, that drive and that need to want to step out and make decisions for yourself. And that Uranus is constantly doing this back and forth of like, oh no, I have a fear of incompetency, that I don't have enough information, or I have too much information and it's hard for me to separate out. So I feel like I can't make a decision because I feel like I'm going to make the wrong one.
Hmm.
And this definitely was also very symbolic of some of the relationship issues that you had talked about as well, with these particular planets. So some of the keywords I wrote down were, during the year, there can be stress, disagreements, and conflicts, inevitable changes, restlessness, dissatisfaction. And the dissatisfaction is the purpose of that feeling is to call you to action. It's a call to action to change and to start making very purposeful, initiating, intentional choices.
Yeah.
So it's going to feel like you're betraying some part of your old self, or it's going to feel like you're betraying your children, or betraying things, in a sense, from your younger self or your inner child. Even we can even go as far back as that. But if you do make more changes, based off of that restlessness, you actually will find that you'll feel happier in that process. You'll actually feel more fulfilled, because Mars is moving towards Venus, which Venus is desires, and Venus is the relationship with yourself, which is stressed right now. It's sandwiched between Mars and Saturn, which are malefic planets. So it is definitely a difficult time. So that's something that I wanted to affirm with you, that everything that you're saying, everything that you're feeling is
Mhm.
1,000% justified. And it is okay to sit in that emotion and not immediately need to ground it and create a purpose out of it. I hope that makes sense. Using
Yeah,
the stress and overwhelm as a way to gain insight about yourself,
right.
as a way to explore your own identity. Um,
I'm
how are
trying
you
not to make
feeling about
right
all
this.
that?
I'm I mean, it's nice to get some confirmation on where my head's been at for sure.
Hmm.
Um, and it's nice to know that I do need to like take a moment. I've always in the past rushed to decisions, and I've based a lot of my relationship decisions on the wrong things. And I've
Right.
been really conscious of that and trying to just step back and look at the bigger picture
Hmm.
and know that no relationship is perfect,
Hmm.
and that 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 illusion that oh, we're soulmates and everything's wonderful, and it's like it's not always like that, and it doesn't have to always be like that. I am a very strong personality, so anyone that's with me has to be thick-skinned.
Yeah.
And so that's hard for me. um
Yeah.
so
It is.
um
Yeah, I understand that a thousand
yeah,
percent.
yeah. So I'm trying to take my time on making decisions right now. I've had
Hmm.
multiple conversations lately, and I feel bad because um, there's like zero trust in the emotions that are being shown to me. Like I don't
Hmm.
trust the emotions from him at all.
Okay.
So
Yeah, and that is, if we're talking, yeah, so we're talking about the relationship, which I did have a bi-wheel, but I don't know where it went. Sometimes it likes to disappear on me. Okay, that's fine. We can definitely pull it again. That's fine. Okay. So, all right. So this is your synastry, which I'm sure you've looked at before at some point. Have you looked at your chart with him before?
not like this, no.
Okay. And what's his name again?
His
I
name's
won't
Rich.
share it with anyone.
That's okay. His name's Rich.
Okay, Rich. Just so that way I'm actually calling him by his name and not just by an acronym.
That's okay.
So one of the things that you'll notice, and I don't know if it'll be better to separate the two charts from each other so you could see things a little bit easier because this could be difficult to read. So if it's difficult for you to read, I can separate into two charts.
Yeah, maybe do that if you
Okay,
don't.
it is a lot. It's a lot for somebody
Yeah.
if they haven't seen. So we'll do two wheels. Okay, I might have to increase this. Okay, is that a little bit better? You can see everything?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, great. All right. So, one of the things, it's so funny I find that oftentimes people will speak their chart or like speak the relationship, like the dynamic. So one of the things that I wanted to note for you is that, for one thing, I think in communication is very important for you because I think from childhood, communication was something that wasn't utilized healthily or properly.
Correct.
And a lot of things were just restriction or action or like outbursts even. So I think for you with that Mercury Venus, like for you, you really need to come to a sense of understanding someone's spirit, someone's soul. Really, this is a very sacrificial way of relating. This is a love that tends to be unconditional. So even as you were describing how you relate to others, you're very understanding of their flaws. You're very perceptive, very insightful about the fact that relationships aren't perfect, even though this is a naturally romantic position. And a lot of people may not get that from you from initially meeting you with that Capricorn. They might get, oh, she's really hard or stern or kind of cold,
And that's
or
exactly how
man,
I'm perceived. Yeah. Yeah.
she's like strong woman, right? So, but inside at the depth, you're very, very sensitive,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
you honor someone's spirit, you try to meet them where they are, right? So for you, communication is super important. And for him, there's this Neptune and Mercury here. So, and what Neptune was nicknamed as far as the elder planets, so Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Neptune is known as the great dissolver. So it breaks down energies of what it touches. Now, the positive of this is that this is great for like spiritual development, for exploring themes that aren't physical manifestations, things of the material world. But when we need something more concrete and structured, like effective communication, someone describing what it is that they need in a relationship, like what is being fulfilled, what isn't being fulfilled, someone expressing appreciation, even that tends to get lost in translation because your Mercury and his Mercury are not lining up. They're in conflict. So you communicate one way and he communicates another way.
Absolutely.
And then he may communicate through mixed messaging, and he may
Mhm.
be hot and cold to
Mhm.
where you're like, I can't get a sense of what it is that I'm meant to be doing here. Because I feel like when we do communicate, I got one impression, so I tried to adapt or change because Venus, Mercury, and Pisces is very fluid. So like you can make changes, right? You can like be receptive to that. And the Capricorn energy really wants to be really effective, really wants to be seen as significant and competent and well versed. So for you, that's something that you take very seriously in relationships. And so you maybe will adapt or like try to understand, and then the next minute he'll give you a different mixed message, and it's like, how do I, how do we come to a common ground? How do we compromise? And it's very difficult when placements like this are present. Um, so is that aligning up with your experience so far?
Yes, he's not good with communication. He's more of a doer. He's one of those people. It's like, well, if I didn't care about you, I wouldn't have done ABC. And I'm like, that's not how relationships work.
Mm-hmm.
At least
Yeah.
not in my mind, they shouldn't. I'm like, it's not just about that. And if you're doing something that's beneficial for yourself more so than it is for, it's not just about me, then no, you're not, this isn't about me. This is about you as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes any sense. We just, we're just night and day. But yet
Yeah.
I, I, um, I panic without him. And
Yeah. And
I
I could
don't,
definitely see that as well.
yeah. And I don't know why.
Well, there is, so his Saturn is, in this area of relationships. So this is a pretty strong overlay typically for people who get in romantic relationships that tend to develop into a serious connection. So there is this sense of, he might feel a sense of duty or obligation to you, and this can be positive or negative. But there is a little bit of a binding effect that happens when Saturn is so close or in a very prominent house, especially a relationship house. But then we also have a lot of this energy with Pluto as well. And I have notes over here too. So, because I have ADHD, so my mind will get lost if I don't have like notes in front of me. Okay, where did I put it? I wrote it down too. So yeah, we also have Pluto and Venus. So this is a deep attraction to somebody that tends to be instantaneous. We also have Uranus playing a role in this as well. So this is the Pluto that you have here, Pluto Uranus, and that is relating to all of this Sagittarius energy that he's got here. So it's creating this intense dynamic that does create, in some ways, anxiety. It can definitely bring forth fears as well. And I also noticed there was a lot of karmic connections in your chart as well. And when astrologers talk about karma, we talk about like a spiritual need to help someone develop in a specific way, or being present in someone's life to be a teacher or a guru in a way. So there is this sort of relationship here as well between the two of you, where he's bringing themes of friendship and helping you align with your dreams, goals, desires, and you're helping him with spiritual development and spiritual growth and aligning with his own ethics as well. So there is this stark contrast and difference in how you two relate, and especially how you two communicate.
Yeah.
But I think even deeper than that, it's learning how to overcome conflict resolution and how to be in a partnership while also being two individuals at the same time. So I feel like there's probably a seesaw effect of when you guys create that space between each other and have that separation and when you come together. So
Yeah. So we've been together for 10 years this
wow,
September.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
We just moved in together this past August. So we've been living 45 minutes away from each other and still maintaining a relationship. There was a year where I stepped away from him because I just was not happy and I needed him to make changes. In that year, I didn't have another relationship, but I did make a really close connection, friendship with someone
Hmm.
that's still sitting out there, that like the communication is flawless. It's so easy to talk to him. It's everything's just easy.
Yeah.
Everything. It's just like there's there's
Hmm.
no it's just flawless. But I'm not I can't just walk away from this without knowing that I've tried everything I can.
Hmm. Yeah.
And my kids love him. He's integrated into our world. And
Oh, that's difficult. Yeah, I understand that.
yeah, so we live together, but all of my kids are grown. I don't
Hmm.
have any kids at home. And we're in a temporary living situation because of building. So where we're living right now is not like the end all,
Hmm.
but I don't want him to build when we're not stable.
Right. Um, so I guess where, as far as, are you looking for more like predictive, like where do you think the relationship's going right now? Or are you looking for what
I,
to look out for like over the next year between the two of you? Or what do you
I'm at
feel
the
would best be
crossroad
helpful?
where I either need to be all in with this relationship and accept the good and the bad and make it work,
Hmm.
give it my all, or I need to step away from it and move on.
Okay. And I'm
And I
going
don't,
back again
yeah.
to this really quick because I want to just see.
I think
Um,
part of the struggle is we live together, but there's no physical relationship.
yeah.
And I'm like,
Okay. And that.
I don't understand that. That's not coming from me.
Mhm.
I don't get what's like, I don't understand him and what's happening. He says he's just stressed, but
Yeah.
I don't buy it.
Yeah, well, it's hard, right? With that Mercury Neptune. It's, and
Yeah.
also I forgot to mention with all of that in the fifth house, the fifth house is all about pleasure, it's all about youthfulness, creativity, and the Sagittarius archetype tends to be a little bit non-committal or tends to be the optimist, right? So he'd rather not deal with the
Mm-hmm.
heavy topics. He'd rather not be serious. He'd rather,
And
well,
he's not
let's just
serious.
focus.
He's
Yeah, and let's just focus
serious
on what's
about his
good.
body. He's like a giant kid. He's never been married. He has no
Mhm.
children.
And that's, I mean, the fifth house can be children, but it's, it's interesting that he found a relationship where he received children without
Yeah.
having to birth them.
Yes.
And one thing about the Leo ascendant and the Aquarius descendant, so this is typically like the type archetype someone has an approach to relationships. This energy of Leo is such a giant, colossal energy. And that Aquarius archetype, it tends to not really want to engage in merging their lives with someone legally. They tend to like kind of be unconventional when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
So,
Her never get married. And that used to bother me in the beginning, like the first like 5, 6 years of
mhm.
relationship. But now I just like it is what it is. We're never going to get married. And just the way he is, and that's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but
Right.
what's more important, being with somebody that you feel like you can't be without, or
Mhm.
that, like, if that's a hurdle for him, then I either need to accept it or I need to move on. But to me, that piece is not even in the equation like it was back in the day. Now it's just like, do we belong together? Are we going to work? Am I ever going to be happy with him? Because
Mhm.
when you get a dose of that connection and ease and from someone else, then you're like, I know it's out there now, but that
Mhm.
other person's not in my world. I don't have a physical relationship with them. I don't share finances with them. They're not in my children's world. So of course it seems easy. What
Yeah.
would it, yeah, it doesn't mean that that would actually work, because in my world my kids come first, and anyone that I'm with will always be second to them. And
Right.
Rich knows that, understands it, and doesn't care. Like, he doesn't have to be that center of my universe. That's not his personality,
Mhm.
which is good for me because, you know,
Right. So in
person,
a sense,
yeah,
you have a healthy amount of independence from one another because you've done a lot of that
absolutely.
work with the codependency. He's naturally not codependent, so
No,
that works.
yeah,
Although it sounds like it was more of a learned skill for you than something that was natural initially. Even though
I,
you're a very strong person, like you're a very strong woman, I think that there might have been a coming to terms with that. So
yeah,
exactly like what you said. I do think this does have the potential to work out because your blended chart is really quite beautiful. There is some challenge, but I think that the challenge comes from an inability to express emotionally what you both need at certain times. So there might be a fear of trying to bring certain things up to the surface, or it could be because of the communication issues that happen in the individual charts. It can be difficult. um, you guys might feel like you're being transparent, or one person might feel like they're being transparent but they're not being. I would say that would
mm.
probably be more him than you look like more of the
Oh, I
healthy
say it all.
and yeah, so it's one person saying it all and then one person maybe being overstimulated or overwhelmed, so they just shut down or they just deflect, or and so that's where the issues are coming from. There could be a great, I don't know if you guys have ever considered it, but with Jupiter Saturn here in the eighth, this tends to be a house that deals a lot with like psychology and psychotherapy. So, and that Saturn is really well positioned and that Jupiter is really well positioned here, so it could be possibly delving into, talk therapy if you guys have ever
I
considered that or
suggested
done
that.
it.
Yeah. And he said he'd go. He
I think
said
that
he'd
would
go.
be a great step. I think that is exactly what you need, the mediator between the two of you to help you both be able to learn how to communicate. Because I mean, as an astrologer, I can see the communication difference, but it's hard for me to necessarily say, okay, here are the techniques, here's what you should be doing, because that's definitely more of a like a psychology approach to things.
Yeah.
But we can see where the conflicts are, but I think they could definitely be overcome. So and there is definitely, if I go back to that, and I'll send you my notes, everything that I wrote down, I will
Okay.
send to you so you can reference them. And I'm
Okay.
recording
Thank
this
you.
video too. Yeah, so
Okay.
you can go back through this. So
Thank you.
definitely no big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that Venus Saturn there, right? Is showing there is a need for space. There is a need to, there are going to be adjustments in the relationship. And I think it's going to be how you guys are systematically working together. And it was really revealing that you said, oh, well, we both are in the process of doing this big move, right? And in the process of integrating our lives, but we're separate right now. I think that's a theme that will continue through the rest of 2022, going into 2023. So, and did you say the home was going to be done at a certain time, if I remember correctly?
I don't know when it's going to be done. I have no idea. Um, it's not quite started. Um, because he was renovating another house that he's just now finishing. And once that's finished, it opens the door up to here where we're living right now.
Are you still in Michigan or?
Yeah, we're in Harrison Township, Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know. I wish there was a crystal ball that said stay with him or don't stay with him.
Yeah, well, since I'm gonna, because there's so much with astrology, like we could go into everything. But if you are not opposed to tarot, I'm happy to look at the energy there.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not opposed at all.
Okay, cool. Well, that's usually I'm like, when in doubt, if the astrology starts to feel overwhelming, because it can feel overwhelming, it's a lot. So when that happens, I like to go to the tarot and be like, okay, let's just.
Because I think this other person lingers in the back of my mind, and because I have to communicate with this other person all the time because I work with him, I can't detach from it, and it's not helping. And that's part of the reason why I thought it'd be healthy for me to get a different job someplace else.
Oh yeah, and that is making sense with this solar return moon here. So like emotional connection in the workplace, connecting back to the sun. So it's making you happy, it's lighting you up, and it's,
he's just such a breath of fresh air.
And that's so interesting.
Yeah, we just so it's so effortlessly to like get along. But trust me, there's some dark things that I know that I wouldn't be happy with. And he is type of person that he would need to be not the center of my universe, but he likes to be present in a relationship. So like he's the type of be like, hey, I know you love your kids and all, but we need to spend time together. Like he's that type. Whereas Rich is just like da 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 da.
Yeah,
weeks go by and I haven't seen you, and he doesn't care.
Yeah. So. Okay. Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, I'm pulling some cards here now, just trying to see.
Sorry, I'm cold.
No, that's okay. And one thing that I will make clear as a tarot reader, as an astrologer, I usually like to put a lot of the empowerment back on the client. So that's why typically I will not say this is what you should do. I will give like suggestions, usually like gentle nudging, but I'm usually not going to tell you to do any one which thing. So yeah, it's just because I feel like that is, I don't know, I feel like that's an unethical. So interestingly enough, in the tarot, I pulled your signifier as the Seven of Swords, and this card gets a bad rap. So, but the good thing about that card is that you understand that relationships have an emotional benefit and they also have a practical and pragmatic benefit. And right now you're trying to be resourceful. You're trying to use a lot of information in front of you to say, okay, pros and cons between the two, right? Because I see that there's pros and cons with both. And I don't want to be transparent. I don't want to show my cards right now because I want to make sure that I've really kind of fleshed this out internally and decided what sort of wins out. Is it the emotions or is it the practical side of things? And when you had brought up Rich, you had said, well, my kids love him and well, we're doing this move together, but you didn't talk a lot about the emotions with him. You didn't talk a lot about how he's such a joy to have in your life, or like we have times that are really, really good, but we're struggling. It was more when you were talking from an emotional place, you were talking about this other person. And I think right now that's what is difficult, because I do agree if you were to shift and take a different stance or position, then you got to disentangle your life with Rich. And that is, I understand how scary that is. I don't know if I would be able to do it just because like that's
I do appreciate him and I do care about him a lot, and I love him to death, or else I wouldn't be with him. But we just butt heads so much that I can't see the positives.
Yeah.
But it never used to be like this. We used to have this amazing relationship. And then after we like got back into things when we took like not quite that year break. It's just we've never reconnected.
And you said starting 6 years ago, you felt a lot of stress. Was it about 4 years ago that the relationship started to get a little strained with Rich?
Um,
3, 4 years ago, give
four
or
years
take.
ago is when we got back together.
Okay. But there were more challenges once you guys got back together than what you felt initially?
Yes,
Okay.
even
Because
more.
I was thinking back to that composite chart and I knew Saturn was going through that sign. So
Yeah,
that is explains a lot. Explains a lot.
yeah.
So and what I pulled to clarify your signifier was the Three of Pentacles reversed. So right now you don't feel supported. You don't feel like you have a good teamwork dynamic in
No,
partnerships.
no.
And for you, you really want a union that has that blend of emotionality and sentiment, as well as the practical side of things. Somebody who can respect your very strong, very like defined approach to things, because you might say some Capricorns and say like I'm very particular, right? So it might be that you're looking for somebody that can give you that and meet you where you are, because I feel like based on the relationship I'm seeing with Rich, it might be a lot of you trying to meet him where he is, but feeling like you're giving and giving and giving and giving, but it's like a
Yep.
bottomless pit, and you're like, I don't have any more to give,
I
especially as
yep.
especially as a Pisces Venus, because you'll give till the end of time, right? But you'll get fatigued and burnt out very quickly because you are so empathetic, and you have a great well of empathy. So it's all about finding a
Yeah,
partner who will love and appreciate that.
yeah, and that's I just said to him last night, I'm like, I am spent. I cannot take care of another soul. Like I'm my job is taking care of people, and then I my by my own doing, I'm the caretaker for the entire family. I have four daughters, and I have to check on one each day and see what they need. Are they emotionally good? Do they need anything physically? Like I just this the way I am, and then I move on with my day. Like I don't, and I try their best to take care of him, but I'm the one giving all in the relationship. And
Yeah.
you say that to him, he's like, what do you mean? What I'm doing is for us. I'm killing myself for us. And I'm like, yeah, that's not for us. He's like, yes, so we're going to build this house. It's for us. And I'm like, yeah, you're not getting it. Like,
Yeah.
he's
Mhm.
just not getting it.
Yeah, and it's hard because it's that is just part of his characteristics, and for another person that might be exactly what they need, right? Like it's always interesting that there's a benefit to everything, but it's a matter of the compatibility, what matches up. So when I pulled cards for Rich, what I thought was so interesting is that, I pulled the Queen of Cups. So this is obviously you guys do have an emotional connection. I think that it was probably initially stronger in the beginning. I think there was a big soul connection or spiritual dynamic there. There was nurturing more in the beginning, but how the
Absolutely.
relationship has evolved is the Ten of Wands. Sorry, it's gonna blur a little bit, which is like someone's doing more of the work and putting in more of the effort than the other.
Yeah.
And it's it's shifted from this emotional connection, which is what romantic relationships, partnerships should be based on, as well as the practical side of things. But it's been more based around this project of the house and like trying to merge things, and it's sort of shifted away from what's important, what brought you guys together initially.
Yeah.
um and there is a non-committal energy there with the Ten of Wands, because it links back to Sagittarius. So it links back to the focus is a lot on him and there's not enough focus on you.
Yeah.
um and
Yeah.
so with this other person, I pulled the Judgment card, so Major Arcana. So this is a big decision, and I do think, the Judgment card is all about fate and being called to ascend from a lower place to something higher. So a lot of people, this is a call to action. Like, are you going to step into your higher self? Are you going to step into what's going to serve you? Are you going to step into your own divinity and trust your intuition? Or are you going to resist? Because if you resist, you might get pulled kicking and screaming to that place. or you
Yeah.
might miss the opportunity. So it is a very scary place to be. You know, it's definitely unsettling, in the sense of, you know, that there's something important there. You know that there's a connection there. And what clarified this was the Four of Wands reversed, which to me is also symbolizing this could be something wonderful, but there is something holding you back from pursuing that.
Yeah.
So if I were to break it down in the simplest terms possible, I think that things with Rich could improve, but only if you guys go to talk therapy. I
Yep.
feel like if you continue the road you're on, you're going to get the
Okay.
same pattern, and it's
Yes.
going to just be to the point where that Mars and Aries is going to come out and be like, I'm gone. Like, I
Yeah.
finally am going to advocate and stand up for myself and say no. And I'm gonna make a choice for myself, which I don't normally do, right? Like I have all of this energy that can do it, but I
Yeah.
typically give it to other people. And you have to get sort of to like a rock bottom, I think, for you to be like,
Yeah, that's
okay,
my biggest fault is I always let things get to a rock bottom before I address them. And I hate that I do that.
yeah,
But and
it's so difficult. It is.
I wouldn't be leaving Rich for anybody else. That part I do want to make clear. I would never be leaving him for somebody else. I would be moving on my own, and I would be on
Mhm.
my own because I can't have a relationship with that particular person, even if I wanted to, because we work together.
Right. And
So
that could be the Four of Wands reverse too. It's like, I know this could be great, but I shouldn't do this, right? Like it's a
yeah,
temptation,
yeah.
and it could be wonderful, but now again, there are a lot of presentations and opportunities for job changes too. So, you know, it's not something you, I think, should have to put off the table completely. But I also think that you could continue to build a connection, even if it's not an intimate one or a physical one with this person.
I have,
I saw.
yeah.
Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just that the connection is just like literally you can't get any stronger. It's ridiculous. And and he knows that I'm with Rich, and he's respectful of that. He doesn't, like pursue, but he always says to me, he goes, "I'm just telling you, like I never met anybody like you. Like I've never connected with anyone like I connect with you, and it's not about anything except that we just really get along." But he's a hothead, and I don't do well with hotheads because I'm a hothead. So, uh,
Yeah.
but but he, we just I would have to squeeze into his world, and I'm so tired of squeezing into people's worlds. You know, I don't.
And that is really something, you're really breaking away from that. Like you're in a stage of your life where you're purging
I
things
am.
that are baggage, that
Yeah,
are, and that's why it can feel like you're being re-triggered, like feeling a lot of similar emotions that you felt when you were young, because you're being called to transition.
yeah,
It's like at the point where the caterpillar is already in the cocoon, and now they're starting to break out of that, and it's that's a probably a process for a caterpillar that's not easy. It's something they have to do to
right.
survive, right? But it's not, the process is not comfortable, and that's
Yeah,
all going back to that Pluto being here. It's like the process of what you're going through is absolutely not comfortable. It is testing you to your limits.
oh,
um
it is.
and so as far as, what some things I was seeing for the next year. So I mean, this is still the majority of this year. So again, a lot of self-focus, a lot of breaking away from things, a lot of need for space, a lot of need to reorient and question actions that you're doing as of right now. Like, is this the
Okay.
best idea? Is this something I should be doing? And it's going to be a lot of this processing, unfortunately, for, until next March. It's going to be a lot of that. Now, I think once you can understand and embrace that that is going to be a theme for the year, you can kind of get into this place of acceptance and say, okay, I'm going to try to not get anxious when these thoughts come up rapidly or these feelings come up. I'm going to try to, give my attention to it where I can. And when I feel overwhelmed, I'm going to take that time to decompress. And I think that's a lot of what you need right now. I do feel like work will get better this year, whether that is you going to a different job or whether that's if you just through this connection you have at work or through some of the people you work with, your clients. I do think that things will turn around. It usually
Okay.
takes a bit for the soul return to really start to take effect. So I do feel like work can become something more enjoyable, but your focus really is on home right now and your focus is on your family. And
Yeah.
so I feel like that's something that will bring you a lot of joy this year too. But I think
Okay.
going into 2023, I think there is a lot more energy. There's a lot more feeling like things are much more purposeful, like things are starting to line up a little bit more. Um, and you can see that there's a lot of this energy in the 11th house, which is all about friendships and leaning into your dreams and aspirations and group dynamics and interactions. So I think you could be shifting away from more of these individual relationships and more of integrating this new identity that you've built up over 2022 and how you step into a group dynamic and feel purpose in that regard and how you can become maybe a leader in that dynamic as well, or really find a calling in that way. And that could
Okay.
be something that could be very healing for you as well and very therapeutic. Venus in the 12th is going to show a lot of need for self-care. So oftentimes people do end up becoming single and want to focus more on friendships and like just building more platonic relationships over like the need to be in a relationship, like be in an attachment in that way.
Right.
Of course, everything is going to be based on your choice because there are a lot of elements of fate that we can see in astrology, but free will is going to be a huge part of it as well. Like how you integrate that energy. I know, and
Oh,
this
I
is
just
something
don't know
that
what to do. I know I don't want to be alone the rest of my life. And I would like to get back to a point where I am, feeling that connection and those emotions. I'm just so shut down right now and I don't know why. I don't know. I'm
I
just like
think.
this.
Oh, so sorry. I did not
No,
mean to interrupt you.
no,
I
you did.
think
You're good.
okay. There's a little bit of a delay,
Oh,
so
sorry.
no, that's okay. It's not you. It's just Zoom. So I do think a good first step would be to bring up with Rich again about talk therapy. I think that is the easiest step that you can do. And if you're not in individual therapy, that would be a great way for you to process with someone else in a healthy way
Yeah.
all of this anxiety and overwhelm because I feel like you're just carrying too much on your own. I pulled five more cards here too to
I feel
kind
like,
of just assess. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think
There's
that's a good point.
and there's a need. The struggle with Capricorn ascendant people and Capricorn moon people is that they really repress a lot because they feel like they need to do everything on their own, and it's hard for the Capricorn ascendant person to ask for help, and
Yeah,
especially when the Capricorn ascendant does not feel happy in their vocation. That's when really they start to feel like they are just not connected at all.
absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think because there's so many, and this is not to be insulting or condescending, but because there's so many different areas that are all feeling that pressure, like being in a pressure cooker, I think, over a longer period of time, talking things out with somebody can help you kind of approach those in bite-sized pieces rather than like, okay, we got to try to solve all my problems at one time because I know how overwhelming that can be. And it's just a Pisces thing, right? I'm a Pisces moon. So like, I get that way too, where like, I'm like, help me, help me, help me. I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed that I don't know what to do. And I'm just like, my whole world's falling apart. But at the same time, I don't want to seem like I don't have it together. So I'm just not going to say anything. And I'm just going to try to make it work on my own. And I think there's a need to be vulnerable. I hope that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah,
There's a
it
need
does.
to say, I don't have it all together. I don't have all the answers. I'm a strong person. I'm not going to, I'm not going to be self-deprecating,
Yeah.
but I'm struggling and I need help. And so I feel like for you and Rich, a mediator is a good idea. And I also think this relationship with the coworker could be something also really healthy and therapeutic for you because you do have an understanding and respect. So I don't feel like you have to compromise necessarily.
Yeah. He's the person that has finally in my entire life made me feel secure. Like
And
he's
that's
the
big
one.
for you, right?
Yeah,
That's big. We talked about that earlier.
he's the one that broke my codependency, literally. Like
Wow.
having that friendship, somebody that I like communicate with, and our paths have crossed in such a strange way. I mean, when I first met him and was introduced to him when I first started there, because I have to work with him every day, there was this immediate connection. And then I go to find out that he lived down the street from me.
Oh, that's so
And
cute.
and our kids played soccer together. And he had just gotten divorced 2 years prior to me meeting him. So he obviously don't live down the street anymore, but he did. And
Hmm.
there's just all these little connections that were really ironic.
Yeah.
And I don't know, he's just a, fun, easygoing person. But again, I've never had the responsibility with him like I do. Like Rich has been there through thick and thin. Rich has
Yeah.
been there for everything. I mean, he's like a godsend to me and my kids. And he
Yeah.
cares. He genuinely cares. He just shows it in weird ways.
I do see, and I do see that, deep down, I think there is connection there. I think he does care for you. I think it's a lot of the trivial day-to-day stuff with him. I think more than necessarily the big picture. I think the big picture, you guys are compatible, but it's difficult because again, as my ethics are, like I would hate to tell you what you should do as far as like making a choice and then you come to regret it or I interpreted something wrong.
And that's my fear. It's like, yeah, everything looks like all fun and, oh, so easy and so seamless with the other gentleman. Not to say that I would even end up with him, but the grass is not always greener on the other side. And
It's
and I'm
not.
no, and I'm so afraid of making the wrong decision and ruining something that I potentially, life could be good. So,
Yeah. It,
because we're in such a really bad place right now
mhm.
that I just can't see past anything. And then, I just right now, like, so here's a direct question. I don't know that you can answer.
Sure, go ahead.
Um, we have to make a decision on this building of the house.
Okay.
So that means that we would move out of where we're at right now, and we'd have to find another place to live while the build is happening.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's what we should do. Should I just move on my own and, not necessarily leave Rich, but just like continue to work on it? And he's here and I've moved on my own. Or does it seem like we would actually do this? Like, is this
Okay.
ever going to happen? Because this build has been talked about for 8 years.
Wow.
And so that's why I'm just,
Yeah.
mm, yeah.
You know, yeah, I would say so. What I just did was cast a Hore chart, which is basically when someone asks a question, you cast
Okay.
a chart the exact time that they ask to get an idea of. This is really great for yes, no, right? It's really great for like, what should I do? Or like, does this idea have weight to it? Like, could it be successful? And so oftentimes we look to there's a whole bunch of rules, but basically what I'm seeing is I actually think you guys would be better moving on from the idea. I don't know if that's weird or like if that's,
Really?
yeah,
Oh,
I don't know if that's like a shocker, but I'm kind of seeing it as like the opportunity, like it might be more of like oh, it's a really nice idea, but I'm not really sure if it's actually going to come to fruition. And that's just
wow.
based on some of the rulerships. Yeah, I know. I wasn't expecting that, but that's based on some of what I'm seeing here. I mean, there is a possibility for sure. I'm not going to say that there's not, but the moon is aligning more with Venus, which is representing you in this situation, and then Saturn representing the home and property and building is here in the fifth, which is like, oh, it's a great idea. Like it's a great idea. Like it's a fun idea. Like it's something that, well, it'd be great for the kids, right? Because the fifth house is children. Like, so it's kind of based on a lot of, okay, like we've thought this out and we like the idea of it. And it could go well. I mean, Saturn's in good position, but it's also retrograde, and the moon is a timing factor. So oftentimes think of it as like a minute marker on the, and it's moving this way. So it's moving towards that Venus. So to me, I would say there's probably a stronger implication of, the opportunity not being as strong to make that work. But if I were to pull the tarot too, I pulled the Four of Cups. So it's like there's not enough emotional intention to make it work out. It's kind of the fours in numerology are stagnation. So it's like there is inaction happening here. So if you were wanting to make that work, you would have to completely start the idea from scratch and like take a different approach in order to get that to actually move.
So what I'm hearing, if I heard you correct, is to build right now is not the time, meaning this calendar year.
Yeah.
Because we're not emotionally stable.
That's what I would say. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I said to him just 2 days ago. I said, we can't talk about building when we're not emotionally stable. And that's,
again, the ever optimist is like, but why not? Like, it's like, I'm telling you something.
Right. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. We're all fine. That's how, and I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm not fine. Like, hear my word. So no building this year.
I don't see it.
And do you see me moving then?
Well, let's see. You're definitely scared to move. And I think you're pretty resistant to the idea. The main thing for you right now is your ability to feel emotionally fulfilled. So let me just see. Yeah, definitely indecision. I think ultimately you'll move. I'm not sure if it'll happen this year. So I think more of the career changes will happen first, and then a move will subsequently happen after that. But I think it would probably be pretty soon after that. So I'm thinking more 2023 is like what I'm seeing more for a move. And if I were to go back here again, yeah, I see more of a possibility of moving based on some major changes that you make this year, as far as lining up with what it is you want, really coming to terms with what it is you desire. Because next year it's going to be all about breaking certain habits and systems that you've built for yourself. And I know we're out of time. I don't know if you have to go back to work or I'm not sure if you're working or.
I'm fine. I work from home right now. So that means I'm staying here with him.
That is interesting. I do think there is an indicator though, that I do think you guys might actually take the therapy thing seriously. I definitely think that might be a direction you guys go in, especially since you said that he said he would, right?
No, he would totally go. It would be so challenging for him because he has zero communication. Like, it's just not in his wheelhouse.
But he needs that. He needs someone to teach him, build the skill with him.
I build you a fire. There you go. Like, that's him. He's like, I'm communicating. I build you a fire. Like, that's like, he's a doer. And
it's like you're narrating, sir. You're not communicating.
He's like, I know how much you like a fire. I build you a fire. We can go sit there. Great.
I do think a lot of the stress came from when you guys got back together, a lot of Saturnian energy, which made you guys feel limited and restricted in the relationship. It also is a pessimistic quality for Saturn. So it's a lot of seeing, what's not, seeing the bad, seeing all the flaws. So a mediator could definitely help. I definitely think, because communication seems impossible in a way when it's just the two of you trying to work it out on your own, because the communication and relation styles, love languages are so different. So I think, a therapist could help you bridge those things, because I do think your composite chart looks really good. I think there is that opportunity for you guys to really build something together. And you guys have been together 10 years. Yeah, I hear you. Building something for 10 years. And so I think you do owe it to yourself to try to see this through and go through this option and possibility. And I don't think anything, I don't necessarily think you're going to be missing on any opportunities as far as relationships. You still have a lot of your life ahead of you. And I think that, that's the first step. I think the therapy is the first step. And then once you're able to start coming to terms with a lot of what's happening to you and just sort of having somebody continually affirm you and also continually empower you to make decisions and not feel scared of breaking things up or, rocking the boat or coming off too strong, right? So like just saying, hey, I got to do what I got to do for me, like treat yourself the way you treat your daughters, like how you would advocate for them is how you should start stepping into advocating for yourself. So, and you could definitely make it an ultimatum for sure. Just say, hey, look, we either do the therapy thing or, that's it. Because right now it definitely seems a little bit in between. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear because I know and that's everybody, right? They want yes, no.
No,
when it's free will and it's a test, right? It's a test in your life. This is what you're meant to be going through. So in some ways the astrology or the tarot won't give you necessarily the answers because it's a need for you to take action in a particular way. And so for here, it's a need for you to do things for yourself, to stand up for yourself. So once you come to terms with what that is and what that looks like, then starting to do it, and then a lot of the energy will start to fall into place. So
I kind of had the right thought then, because I said to him, we need to focus on whether this is working or it's not. I was like, because I'm not doing this anymore. Like we're either working this out or we're not. Because for him, he's perfectly fine. He doesn't see any issues. He doesn't have any qualms about it. Like it's all coming from me. So I'm like, either things have to change or we're going our separate ways. Like I'm just very blunt that way. I'm just like, either, we're doing this or we're not doing this. So with me saying that means we just focus on this either working or not working for the rest of the year. And then next year, I'll either be moving on my own or we'll be moving together. And then maybe we'll build the house next year. Or are you saying the house just needs to not be built at all?
I wouldn't say not at all, because the idea in and of itself is not a bad one. So that's the first thing. It does have good foundation to it. And I think it is something you could do. I just don't think for the 12-month period, it's a reality or it's something realistic. And I know that word resonates with you. You're like, oh, it's not realistic? Okay, got it. Like the Capricorn in you is going to be like, I'm not going to put my energy into anything that is a waste of time. So I would table it. I would table it for now. Yeah.
I noticed you said 12-month period. You're talking like this time next year, shelf it?
I would say probably at least till January, but it very well could be until spring or summer next year.
Yeah, I'm thinking shelf it until like February or March of next year, easily. Okay.
Yeah, that was more my intention when I pulled it, was the beginning of 2023, because your birthday is so close to the beginning of the year. So I would say that's probably a good idea. And I know it's scary because I know, when you get a reading done and you're in a place where there's a lot of things going on, it can feel frustrating to feel like, in a way, I don't know if I necessarily got all my questions answered, or I still feel, confused, or I still feel conflicted. Definitely take the time to process, take the time to go back through the video. I'll send you some notes that I have, because there was a lot I wasn't able to go over. So there's a lot that I'll send you.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah. And then from there, if you need a follow-up, like a 30-minute, we can definitely do that. But the main thing is to definitely start taking action and definitely not be afraid to be decisive this year. That's a big thing.
Yeah, so I need to somehow separate from this other gentleman and just take him out of my thought process, which is kind of hard because he's not pushy, but he makes it quite clear all the time how much he cares about me, how much he adores me, and life could be so much easier. And, it's just, you know, it's a no-brainer. We click and da 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 da. And I'm like, stop. Stop here. Just get out of my head.
Yeah, and you're so capable, right? So like you can do this. You can do whatever you set your mind to. And for some people, like astrologically, their will is a little bit weaker, like, but you have a lot of will. You have a lot of power. Don't be afraid to use it. Like that's your God-given gift in your chart. Don't be afraid to let it loose and create a life that you love. I just think that the process will be a little bit of a slow one, but I think once you kind of get into the groove of doing it, you're going to start feeling that sense of freedom. And that's a lot of what I was seeing in 2023 is like, oh, I feel so much more freedom. I feel like so much more in control. Right. And that's such a gift.
That's what I need. Because right now I feel like I'm drowning and I'm just like beyond, I can't, there's like, I see no light. Like I'm just drowning.
Yeah.
So
I've had those years too, believe me, and they were really hard, but
this has been the hardest year.
It is temporary. I promise it is temporary. And I had a similar thing last year too, where I had like Saturn and Venus in the first house, and that sucked. It sucked. I did not like it. I did not like it at all. I don't recommend it, but we all go through it at some point. So, you will get through this. So, but I'll go ahead and send you some notes. It might take me a bit to get them to you, but because I have them all written out and not everything typed. But I'll send you some notes on a lot of the different things that I did for prep, and then take some time. But if you have any questions, just reach out. I'm usually very responsive, so I will get back to you as soon as I can.
I so appreciate you, and I'll look for something from you towards the end of the week because you said you had to get it together. So I'll just keep an eye on it. I want you to know that you were referred to me by one of my old coworkers who just said you were phenomenal.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
You changed her world. And
who was it?
Her name is Zoe Maxiola.
Zoe.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I've done so much work with her. I love her so much. Oh my gosh.
Her and I worked together, and she made some serious life changes recently. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to like work with you anymore. And her and I are kind of like a little bit of kindred spirits. I mean, she's like the age of one of my children, but I have such a connection with her. And sorry. And she's
it's okay.
She's like, you have to do this. Like, you're just gonna keep drowning. Like, you have to contact her. So thank you for taking the time.
Welcome. You're so welcome. And honestly, it's like you guys give me a gift too, because this is my passion. This is what I love to do. So I am so happy.
So appreciative. Thank you so much. I'm very appreciative, and I look forward to seeing what else you have to share. So thank you.
Well, take care. Okay, really take care of yourself, and I'll check in on you.
Yes, you'll hear from me again. Trust me.
All right, I'll speak to you soon, Sophia.
Thank you. Bye.